Welcome to the TAF Hub. This is a brand new show brought to you by TAF Africa Global to educate you on real estate business and all the information you need to know about real estate.
After 45 years of construction and real estate development in 8 African countries, it is time to share my experience, and it can only be done in the TAF Hub. We will be inviting experts who will give you facts and the right regulations on real estate development.
Join us every week on our social media platforms for an exciting show. You can also watch us on JRTS TV every Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
Hi viewers, welcome again to another TAF Hub. Today we have a big surprise, somebody quite big. What I would call a big fish. We've caught a big fish today.
Yes, we did.
But you will know that later. But first, let me start by introducing my co-host, Mariama, who doesn't want to be the host. I am pushing her to be the host, but I'm here with my co-host, Mariama Kodi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Njai. It's a pleasure, and I'm really excited to be back on this platform again, the TAF Hub, and ready to be inspired by our guest, just like he mentioned. We catch a big fish today, and I'm really excited. I know for a very long time we've wanted to have him on the TAF Hub, and it's finally happening.
Thank you so much. So, viewers, today we have nobody other than the Honorable Ebrima Sillah, who is the Minister of Works, Minister of Transport, Works and Infrastructure. Honorable, you're welcome to the TAF Hub.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mariam, and thank you so much, TAF, for this rare opportunity to be on your platform and to share with you some of the ongoing initiatives of our ministry, where I am just newly appointed, less than 3 months, as the Minister of Transport, Works and Infrastructure, as you rightly said. Yeah.
Great, great. What we do, Honorable Minister, on the TAF Hub, we don't introduce you. But I think you need to tell our viewers now a brief bio of yourself, who you are and where you started from, a rundown to where you are today.
Well, thank you so much. I come from a small village in the Greater Banjul area called Jambur in Kombo South district of the West Coast region, and from a very humble background, just like most of our rural villages.
Like all of us.
A very humble background. Then I started my primary school in Jambur Primary School, and then later on in my primary school life, I joined my brother, who was a headmaster, and we've been in different parts of the country. Then I was in Burfoot also, where I sat to my common entrance examination, and then went to Nusrat High School. And then from there, in my final year, I was lucky. The Point newspaper had just opened, and while I was in the high school, I was freelancing for both the Point and also the Daily Observer newspaper of Kenneth Best, the Liberian publisher, who had some issues with the then government of Charles Taylor when they just took over as a rebel movement and then ran to the Gambia. So before I finished my high school, actually, the Point had already engaged me. And by then, the late Babukar Gay was one of the editors, and Deda Hydra and Pap Sen. And a few months with the Point, Babukar had already set up the New Citizen newspaper. And then he went with me. I served as a reporter. I never jumped, a position.
Yeah.
I first as just a trainee in the newsroom, then trainee assistant, then you go into, writing, newspaper, news reporter, and then senior reporter, and then principal reporter. Babakar was very methodological in the newsroom, I mean, in addition to the training. And then, you know, deputy news editor, then news editor. And then by then we also had our own radio station called Citizen FM. And then in 2017, it was 1997, I started freelancing for the BBC. And this continued until 2001, when I was posted in Dakar. And then I was exposed to international reporting. I covered several, big events in the region and also in the Central Africa region. And then also I covered some conflicts in Guinea-Bissau, some coup d'etats, obscure coup d'etats in the region at the time. And then in 2007, I had a career shift, to work in South Sudan. This was the time when, preparations were actually ongoing for the country to have independence. And then they had this constitution written in English, and then they wanted it translated in all the local languages for people to have direct understanding of what was in the constitution. So I was lucky to have been contacted, and then, I worked in South Sudan. At that time, people were just, international NGOs and big organizations were just newly coming in. The facilities were very basic, just containerized, improvised houses and toilet facilities outside. And then even the shower, you just take your bucket and then go out. And I found some phenomenal Gambians there, who were also doing great work, promoting human rights issues, supporting the local communities. So my role was to work with the community radio stations. By that time, actually, the setup was very basic. Most of the stations don't actually have a kind of a setup of a radio station. So you can just have people put up some kind of antennas on top of a tree just to have radio signals. So, but it was good because what happened was that we also worked with some agencies, because there was very little electricity in the area, So we worked with a South African company to produce en masse these, radio sets that you use. You have to wind it.
Wow.
It was powered on,
Battery.
No, not a battery, because our fear was some of the places they don't even have a shop.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with an innovative way for people to listen to these radio stations. So there was this company in South Africa that was producing this type of radio stations, radio sets that you will have to wind and wind and wind, and it will take you 2-3 hours. It will give it, the life energy for it to at least, you have the opportunity to listen to the programs, So, and because some of these communities also were nomadic communities and, fighting also in the refugee camps. So it was a very popular scheme. So we were giving radio stations, radio sets, to people. The project was doing that as part of efforts to ensure that people listen to some of these programs and know exactly what was in the Constitution. And you had experts that you work with, who would translate from English into local language like Dinka and all the rest, so that, people would listen in their own local languages what was stated in the Constitution. Then, I came back to Senegal to work with the Panos Institute on a project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation called the Pan-African Radio Platform Project, which actually was also working with community radios across Africa to use media to enhance development outcomes. For example, if governments want to accelerate efforts to fight, to eradicate malaria, and it is difficult with all these, attitudinal issues. So the project was working with other international organizations who provide, say, impregnated bed nets, you know, and also other services. But we come in to enlighten people, to sensitize people about malaria, how to prevent themselves, what to do to ensure that they can, you know, prevent their families, you know, from being, you know, infected. We also work on neglected tropical diseases. These are diseases that everybody thought have been eliminated, but they are causing havoc in our communities. That's like elephantiasis, like onchocerciasis, the blindness, you know, I mean, and these are diseases that nobody would put their money in because they are not happening in big developed countries. So they are neglected, they are forgotten, but yet they are killing a lot of people in developing countries. So we were using the media, you know, to promote, you know, those things, to help local people understand how to cope with those things. And we were working on a lot of climate change projects.
Great.
Then in 2017, when the change happened, I was already in Ghana. We were working on projects to use the media to enhance peaceful electoral outcomes. We piloted this in Nigeria, where, you know, the media will work with politicians, decision makers, and also, you know, the key influencers to ensure that they have a common convergence on issues that should be done in an election period to ensure that you can express your divergent opinions, but yet promote peace, you know, in your messaging. And the media was used as a buy-in. Then Ghana also, we use a similar methodology. Then 2017, I came here, you know, strangely, just to, you know, pay homage to my late dad, because he died in my absence, and I could not come here in 2015. You know what was happening here. Yeah, so unfortunately, you know, I stayed for at least 4 days, and some of my friends who we were working with in the diaspora then wanted to go and see the president. You know, and then they told me to go along. We went, and then president saw me and said, okay, oh, we were looking for you. Everybody thought, you know, you can take care of the GRTS for us. I said, oh, Mr. President, I didn't come here to work. But, you know, the rest is history. So I was appointed DG GRTS in 2017, and then in 2018, I was appointed minister while I was in South Korea, actually, doing a very advanced training program on digital migration. It is something that is new for a lot of countries in the region, and they wanted to have, you know, career broadcasters, especially at the very top, to get their buy-in on this very important thing, so that we, you know, migrate from analog broadcasting to digital broadcasting. Yeah, so.
Excellent.
That's an interesting profile there, very rich, and I am just happy listening to, you know, all the stages that you have to go through to get to where you are today. But what ongoing initiatives from your predecessors have you taken up, and what new initiatives have you initiated yourself at the ministry right now?
Thank you so much. I mean, knowing that government is continuum, when I came in, I got a comprehensive handing over note from my predecessor, Honorable Uncle Bailamin Job. Very supportive, and he encouraged me a lot. And he's still encouraging me, because it is his interest to see there is continuity. And they have put in place a very comprehensive system. Throughout the country, they've mapped almost all the road networks that should be done. They have 400 kilometers of rural roads that have already been mapped. They have already done over 400 kilometers of road networks across the country. Some very important bridges. And then we also have a very comprehensive but not complete list of urban roads that I am continuing with. We have some fantastic policies, you know, that my predecessor had initiated, including the transport policy, and also the overall makeup of the entire ministry. Because when he came in, being somebody who also had worked in this sector before, going to international, he understood very well the need to have the real structures in place and the policy guidelines that will help a ministry to function effectively, especially its oversight functions. So those are very, very important steps, because one of the problems that I think previous governments faced was they had a ministry. The structures were there, but there was kind of no interlinkage or very little. So when Uncle Bailamin came, he closed that gap. He built on that and then, you know, put in the necessary structures and with accompanying policies to help the ministry raise funds, with, you know, well, of course, with the support of the Ministry of Finance, you know, come up with projects, have highly qualified, you know, I mean, and trained personnel at the level of the ministry, you know, the NRA strengthened to be able to function, the National Road Authority to be able to do its technical, you know, supervision of road infrastructure works in this country, and also to have a division, you know, that deals with transport, because transport management is a big problem in this country, and a whole lot of other important initiatives that he put in place. So we are continuing with those ones, and they are extremely very good. So for me, the new initiatives that I have looked at, and then we are very much keen on those ones, is first to set up what we call the infrastructure fund. This is extremely critical for a country, and it's like one of the important priorities among the priorities for me. If you look at the overall government expenditure on road, you know, I mean, projects in this country is phenomenal and is a huge constraint on the budget. Now, I mean, what I have decided, and in consultation with some experts in this country who have done this job in other countries around the world, and they were very successful. They have retired there in this country. And in addition with my local, you know, my technical staff at the ministry, is to set up this infrastructure fund where we look at the kind of infrastructure that we have. For example, the Senegambia Bridge, which was built at a tune of about 150 million. Now that it is complete, you know, we can, if you value it, dollars. Yeah, dollars. You know, I mean, if you value it now, I mean, you may say that it may go up to $170 million. We have the conference center that was built at a tune of $50 million. And if you value that today, maybe we can say maybe 55 million or 60 million. I mean, you have the two bridges in the URR. I mean, and also we have the VVIP launch that is going to be completed. Now, what we are thinking is to monetize all this, value them properly, and use them as equity for this infrastructure fund. And then you have, you know, I mean, partners that will put in this basket fund managed by the Ministry of Finance and probably the central bank. Then anytime you want to, you know, do your infrastructure projects, rather than having to put a huge constraint on the national budget, you go to this fund, take what you need, and then some of these infrastructure facilities that we have, you monetize them, and then their equity, whatever is coming in from them, you ring-fence it to repay whatever you are taking from this fund to build. So that in itself will be an innovative way of funding infrastructure projects in this country, in addition to maybe what government may put in or what the funders or international donors will put in. But at that time, you will know that you have your own local basket fund that can help you, you know, do this. Other countries have done it, and they have done it successfully. We have all the expertise in this country who have helped other countries to do this, and really, we want to take this as a very strong priority. Then the second one for me is to put in place a comprehensive, futuristic, sustainable infrastructure policy for the entire country. Now, if you look at what we are doing, I mean, we want to build roads. We want to make sure that we have, you know, buildings all over. We want to have other projects within these areas. But we need to have a policy guideline that will help us to know for proper urban planning, for proper, you know, coordination, so that when we say we want to build roads, we classify these roads as highways, as rural roads, as urban roads, and then, you know, government will determine how much you need to prepare annually as a budget for all these road classifications. That actually had started with my predecessor, and we are going to continue with that. So that is a very important priority for me. Then the third one is to come up with a synergized concept of infrastructure development that generally, look at with a wholesome, package in terms of public policy clarity also. Like, when you want to build your TAF city, for example, somewhere, one of the biggest problems that you have is access to land, maybe. What do you do to negotiate with the local people? But housing is in great demand in this country. Services need to be in some of these places. Roads need to be in some of these places. There has to be security so that when people buy their expensive houses in these places, they can have a peace of mind that at least, they live in peace and serenity. So that wholesome, synergized approach to development, infrastructure development, is critical for us in many ways. First, it will help developers to also mobilize quickly and then convince, local banks or even lending agencies to be able to, mobilize and deploy and start the work. But also it will help us with all the services there, the electricity, the fiber, because I'm sure maybe you might be paying a whole lot of money to move the Gamtel fiber from the other ring coming from Gunjur that has
Into
to
the
link
city,
with Gunjur into your city. But if we have a mapping and a proper plan of all these areas, some of these services can be provided there by the government to ensure that, the cost of having some of these infrastructures, magnificent investments also, can be lessened on not only the developers, but also the private sector that is working with us. And then finally, as part of efforts to reduce the cost of infrastructure development, especially road construction in this country, we are thinking of bringing in equipment leasing companies into this country. Now, if you look at the cost of mobilization of the construction companies that are in this sector, is phenomenal, is huge. Most of it because the equipment are not here. Imagine if we're able to have 3 or 4 leasing companies that have all their equipment in this country. We can create local content. We can create local, millionaires in the construction and infrastructure development sector. Imagine the battle hardened and other OIC roads that we are doing right now. Almost $5 billion is going to be spent on this project. But almost 90% of the participants are non-Gambians. And this is without prejudice to outsiders. But my agenda is to encourage local Gambians, local contractors to also participate in this, because I was looking at a very interesting report released by the local Contractors Association of the Gambia, where they said almost 85% of all government road contracts are outsourced outside to outside big contractors. And rightly so, because they have the capacity, they have the experience, and they have the equipment. The local ones are benefiting only 15%, which is a small fraction. Now, we want to make sure that our taxpayers' money, part of it also stays here, so that our own people can benefit. But we cannot do that when we don't build capacity. And one of the best ways to build capacity is, part of it, to have these leasing companies here, so that if we are going to give a contract to Mariama, even if you don't have equipment, but you have the experience, you have the people behind you, you will just go and hire, and then government can come up with a provision that even we can pay the leasing company what is supposed to do to them. And then, you take your contract money and then you go and do the road. In that way, we are doing 2 things. First, the money is staying here, but we are also building capacity of our local people to benefit from this, to have experience, and then, they take along. Because there is not going to be a durable, sustainable infrastructural development process in this country when we don't have our local people participating, and not only participate, but effectively participating in the sector. Yeah.
Wow. Excellent. Actually, Honorable Minister, as you were speaking, I was taking notes, and I had questions that I was going to raise before, but as you land, you had responded to those questions that I was going to raise, because basically what you said was in your plan is a fund, infrastructure fund, the policy, synergize infrastructure development, equipment leasing. But then, as a local developer, you know, and representing the private sector. I was going to ask now how, you know, the Gambians are going to benefit from all this. Because, you know, there's quite a lot of money that comes into infrastructure.
Yes.
And then you came up and said, okay, you were going to have an equipment leasing company. But everybody knows that these equipments are very expensive.
Very expensive.
You know, not only are they expensive, but also the capacity to be able to maintain this equipment. Because if you contract out the roads, those guys have an obligation to deliver a standard of road to you.
Exactly.
So we do hear this very often, that, okay, how about us as Gambians, how do we benefit? But regardless of whatever you want to do for us as the local companies, capacity must be built.
Exactly.
So my question was going to be focused more on local capacity building. How do you build capacity? From two things. One, in financing, because it's heavy financing.
Heavy financing.
And then two is also on human resources.
Yes.
But before we do that, I'll ask Mariama to come in. And then we will now continue in our next episode.
That's right. So yes, we will end this episode here. But don't go anywhere. We will be back on part 2 with more of the questions and response from Mr. Sillah. This is the TAF Hub. We'll be right back.
TAF Africa Global presents the first eco-smart city in the Gambia, the TAF City. Located between Gunjur and Sifo, it is 30 minutes away from the Banjul International Airport. At TAF City, you will be able to live, work, play, and shop in a healthy multi-purpose community. This vibrant urban environment will meet your everyday needs with commercial, business, recreational, and other complementary services to increase the value of your home. With up to 5,000 units of affordable homes on a 500-hectare land, TAF City will be twice the size of Banjul. Prime location, stunning properties, and amazing discount of 20% for the first 50 buyers. Make an appointment today to secure your property. For more information, please call +220-776233 or +220-376-2333, or you can send an email to info@tafafricaglobal.com. Better still, visit our office at Madiba Mall, Bruford Gardens Estate. TAF City, a green and smart city accessible to all.